You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, and you're not. At the end of this show, you're going to get the interview that I did with Matt Frazier and Robert Cheeke, the authors of the book on being a plant-based athlete. Very, very interesting topic. I'll say this before I get into my unadulterated Kevin Durant praise, which we all know is coming. That interview wasn't telling you about certain athletes. Like, usually my interviews are telling you about athletes from the past or present-day athletes who you know and love. No. It was about you. It was about how you could better yourself. If you run, if you swim, if you walk a lot, this was to make you better. And this topic was near and dear to my heart because I'm overweight. I mean, I'll be the first person to tell you that. So anything that I can do to control my weight, I'm open to hearing. This was a very good interview. They're two really nice guys. Had 15 minutes with them. Asked them 4 questions each. I really think you'll like it. Okay. Now on to the absolutely Herculean effort by Kevin Durant. Do you remember Game 7 of the 2018 Eastern Conference Finals between the Cavs and the Celtics? If you'll recall, Kevin Love got hurt in Game 6, so it was solely on LeBron to send the Cavs to their 4th straight NBA Finals. And that's what he did. He did that by playing every minute, had 35 points, 15 rebounds, and 9 assists. The Cavaliers won 87-79, and we all know what happened after that. The Warriors destroyed them in the NBA Finals. All the LeBron stans, and I joined them in saying this, said that this was the greatest individual performance in sports history. LeBron nearly has a triple-double in a Game 7 in Boston. He's going up against a really talented Celtics team, and he drops 35. That's the greatest performance ever. And I got caught up in the hype. I'm not going to lie to you. I joined them in saying that. Then I really thought about it. I kind of moved off that. For my money, the best individual effort in sports history is what Madison Bumgarner did in Game 7 of the 2014 World Series. 2 days after pitching a complete game shutout, Bumgarner pitches 5 innings of 2-hit baseball and gets the save in the Giants' third World Series in 5 years. What you saw Kevin Durant do yesterday was just as impressive as what LeBron did in 2018 and isn't far off from what Bumgarner did. What did we all say? That Kevin Durant was going to need to win this game by himself. He would need to be the go-to guy. He would need to step up and single-handedly lead this team to victory. Even if James Harden was going to play, which he did, give him credit. He played 45 minutes. He was not at 100%. That was an impressive effort, but you knew he wasn't going to be at 100%. And it showed. The guy was 1 for 10 from the field, 0 for 8 from beyond the arc. Did he do some other things? The answer is yes, but that was not a great Harden performance. You knew that Durant would need to win this thing by himself. That's what he did. A 49-point triple-double. Playing every single second. The Nets are down by 16 at the half. No one thinks the Nets are going to come back. I didn't think the Nets were going to come back. They're going to be down 3-2, going back to Milwaukee for a Game 6. Now the best we can hope for is a Game 7 in Brooklyn. I mean, come on, that doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in me. Kevin Durant inspired a lot of confidence in me. He said to all Nets fans, to all the doubters out there, even the impartial observers, watch me take over. He scored 31 of his 49 points in the second half. 20 of them came in the fourth quarter. By then, the Islanders had fallen behind 4-1. So I said to my father, Dad, I'm turning this off. I know you're not a big basketball fan, but the Nets are down by 6 in the fourth quarter. It's very possible that they can come back. They're a great crunch time team. I'm watching it now. And he said, okay. You've got to know how to win. And Kevin Durant knows how to win. The Milwaukee Bucks don't. This is a huge choke job. You're up by 16 at the half. You have the opportunity to put your foot on the throat of the Brooklyn Nets. A super team. Even headed into the fourth quarter, you still had a lead. Chris Middleton went cold. Jrue Holiday wasn't good. Giannis wasn't great. PJ Tucker couldn't stop Kevin Durant. Yes, this was a great Nets comeback, but it was also a terrible choke job by the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, you can't have a lot of confidence in them if you're looking forward to Game 6. Yes, it's in Milwaukee, but after watching that performance, how can you have a lot of confidence in them? Look, the home team has won every game this series. It wouldn't stun me if the Bucks forced a Game 7. But I'll say this, I did say Nets in 6. Before the series started, I'm going to stick with it. After watching that Herculean effort by Kevin Durant, how can I pick against the Nets? How can anyone pick against the Nets? How can anyone pick against a team that has Uncle Jeff on it? You know what's kind of funny? Jeff Green was on the Cavs when LeBron James had that great performance in Game 7 of 2018. I'd love to know who he thought had the better performance, LeBron or KD. He'd probably say KD. Durant's performance was better, for whatever it's worth. I mean, I don't think there's a doubt about that. Oh, but Jacob, LeBron didn't have any help. Durant had James Harden. Yeah, Harden wasn't great. He was a decoy. That's all he was. You could tell that he just couldn't get the right lift on his three-point shot. Didn't have the same scoring ability. He did what he needed to do, give him credit, but he wasn't great. He was more of a distraction than anything else. You know what, though? When you have Kevin Durant, Jeff Green, and Blake Griffin playing with you, you can be a distraction. That's okay. Here's what the starting lineup needs to be in Game 6. Okay, I like Bruce Brown, but I think he's better served coming off the bench. I'm going to go a little crazy here. I don't think the Nets have run this starting lineup before. James Harden, Joe Harris, Kevin Durant, Jeff Green, and Blake Griffin. Keep Shamet on the bench. Move Bruce Brown to the bench because he doesn't offer you much offensively except being a cutter, which, given the state of the Nets right now, you really don't need. Cutters are great if you have multiple scoring options, but do the Nets have multiple scoring options? Was Jeff Green ever the primary option on a play that the Nets ran yesterday? Same thing with Blake Griffin. It was all Durant, Durant, Durant. Which is fine. That's okay. I'm not knocking Steve Nash for that. I give Durant a ton of credit for being able to do that. But if you're a one-man band on offense, you've got to have space to work. Having Bruce Brown on the floor doesn't give you that space because he's not a good three-point shooter. There's a role for him on the team. I'm not saying there isn't. But have him come off the bench. I mean, not for nothing, but go back to what Durant did playing 48 minutes. Do you have any idea how hard that is to run up and down the court and be the focal point on offense for every single possession? 99% of NBA players could not do that. They would not have the conditioning necessary to do that. But Kevin Durant is a world-class athlete. He was able to do it. And in the post-game interview, he wasn't even out of breath. I didn't see any sweat on him. 2 years ago, this guy had surgery on a torn Achilles tendon. There was a thought that he would never play basketball again. Now, he's playing 48 minutes in the most important game of the Brooklyn Nets era. Not the history of the Nets franchise, but since they've been in Brooklyn, that was their most important game. With that in mind, Kevin Durant lifted this team up, and now they're one win away from their first Eastern Conference Finals appearance since 2003 when they swept the Pistons. I was absolutely stunned to see Durant play all 48 minutes. I didn't think Steve Nash would do that. I was stunned to see Harden play 45 minutes. This is a team that's been incredibly careful in managing these guys' minutes. If you had set the over-under on Kevin Durant's minutes at 47.5, I would have bet the under. If you had set the over-under on James Harden's minutes at 40, I would have bet the under. Evidently, Nash was saving these guys for a game like this. A game that I don't want to say might as well have been a Game 7. I mean, if I say that, then if there is a Game 7, I look pretty foolish. But I'll say this, the Nets are in the driver's seat now. There's no question about that. I said that whatever team won yesterday was going to win the series. And I picked the Bucks. I gave up. My father was teasing me. And you gave up. Yeah, I kinda did. In no way, shape, or form did I think the Nets were going to win this game. I mean, I'll say this. 20 years from now, when we're looking back at Kevin Durant's career, we could look back to this game as the best game of his career. This could be the Pierce wheelchair game. This could be the Jordan flu game. The last game of Kobe's career. Wilt Chamberlain dropping 100. We could look back at this game as the seminal moment of Kevin Durant's career. If the Nets go on to win the title, yeah. We'll probably be looking at it that way. And look, I understand not wanting to look ahead, but it's hard not to. It's very tempting to look ahead and say who's beating this team. I mean, I'll say this. I think the Nets are going to win tomorrow. Okay, James Harden will be closer to 100%. You gotta think that Joe Harris is going to round into form. Durant may not have a performance like that again, but he'll go off. Jeff Green may not have another game like that, but he'll get his. Blake Griffin's very capable of going off. I mean, let me tell you, the mood inside the Pfizer Forum tomorrow could be very sullen. It could be similar to a funeral march. That's a tough loss to come back from, man, let me tell you. Again, up by 16 at the half. You have every opportunity to beat the Brooklyn Nets at home, go in the driver's seat, and you just choke it away. People say there's no momentum. No, momentum's a thing. The Nets have the momentum. And if they get out to a big lead tomorrow, forget about it. That place is going to be dead. And Mike Budenholzer will be fired before he gets a chance to leave the building. I mean, I'll say this. Assuming the Atlanta Hawks win, and that's a big assumption, because the Sixers still have to be the favorites. Even though it's down to a best 2 out of 3, the Sixers have to be the favorites. But if the Hawks win, and they go up against the Nets in the Eastern Conference Finals, that's a cakewalk. Nets in 5, maybe even Nets in 4. You look to the Western Conference, the Jazz don't scare me. Donovan Mitchell will get his, but other than him, no one else really scares me. The Suns definitely don't scare me. The Clippers scare me a little bit, but I do think the Nets can beat them. Durant and Kawhi pretty much cancel each other out. And Paul George is not a good playoff performer. James Harden and Kyrie Irving are. The Nets will win that series. But even then, there's a caveat to all of that. What's going to happen with Chris Paul? He's in the COVID protocol. Kawhi Leonard may have suffered an ACL injury. It seems like it's shaping up to be the Utah Jazz's first NBA Finals appearance since 1998. The Nets will destroy them. They will limit Rudy Gobert's effectiveness because they'll go small. You'll lure Gobert out of the paint, which will open up driving lanes. Yes, Donovan Mitchell will go off. Okay, we all know that. Joe Ingles will get his. Jordan Clarkson will get his. Mike Conley will get his. Bojan Bogdanovic will get his. But so will Kevin Durant. So will Kyrie Irving. So will James Harden. So will Joe Harris. So will Blake Griffin. Please, 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 let there be a Nets-Hawks Eastern Conference Finals and a Nets-Jazz NBA Finals. Talk about the path of least resistance. Alright, now it's time to preview Hawks-Sixers. It's pretty obvious this goes for both teams. It's all on Joel Embiid. If Joel Embiid goes off, the Sixers will win this game. And people in Philly will retreat from the ledge. All will be right. William Penn will be happy. No one will be taller than him. The Nets could win in 6 and the Sixers could win in 6. So, hey, both teams would be in the same boat in terms of rest, recuperation, preparation, all that good stuff. If Embiid isn't a threat, if the injury starts barking again, the Hawks need to go after him. Get Capella involved. Get Collins involved. Have Trae Young drive to the hoop more. I mean, you know that the Hawks are going to test Embiid all throughout this game. They're going to see if they can re-aggravate the injury that they re-aggravated in Game 4. You may not think that's the cleanest strategy in the world, but it doesn't really matter. It's the right thing to do. Maybe not from a moral sense, but from a basketball sense it is. If your opponent's best player is injured, go after it. Exploit it. It's what the Bucks tried to do with James Harden. There was a play late in that game. Giannis was on James Harden. Harden dug in and played it perfectly. Landry Shamet was going to double. Harden said no. I don't want it. I can deal with him myself. Forced Giannis into a fadeaway that he missed. Bad game plan by the Bucks. I'll say that. Their offense got really stagnant in the second half. Not to go too far down that rabbit hole, but people were saying that Giannis should have been on Durant. Wouldn't have mattered. Durant still would have gotten his. PJ Tucker's done a good job on Durant all series. There are some players that when they're locked in, it doesn't matter who they have on them. Bill Russell, Tony Allen, Mark Eaton. Doesn't matter. They're just gonna go off. Durant was possessed. He was unconscious. He was a man on a mission. No one could have stopped him. If you want to get on the Bucks, get on them for their second half offense. Very ISO heavy, very stagnant, not a lot of ball movement. Like I said, epic choke job by the Bucks. They should have exploited James Harden's injury more. They really didn't. When they tried to, it turned out that Harden was perfectly fine. Maybe not offensively, but defensively he was. James Harden's an underrated defender. He's not TR done or anything like that. But he's a good defender, let me tell you. The Hawks need to do that here to Embiid. Test his injury. Test it early. Test it often. That's how they're going to win this game. But I think Embiid will be fine. I've got a hard time believing that the injury's going to affect him that much again. I'll be rooting for the Hawks hard, but give me the Sixers. Moving on now to Clippers Jazz. It's really simple. Kawhi Leonard is definitely out for Game 5. Okay, that we know. If it's an ACL injury, that's it. He's not coming back in the series. He may not come back for the rest of the playoffs. In fact, he may even miss part of next season. Forget playing in the Olympics. Forget winning a title with the Clippers here. It's not going to happen. I mean, here's the bigger question. How does this affect Kawhi's free agency? Is he more inclined to accept his player option? Probably not. I mean, realize, Kevin Durant tore his Achilles. Got a massive contract from the Nets. Same thing here. When you have a talent like Kawhi Leonard, you know he's going to come back. He'll be just as good as he was before. His last year with the Spurs, he only played in 9 games. The year after that, he won Finals MVP. Led the Raptors to their first ever title. Leonard will still get a hefty contract in free agency. Maybe it makes it more likely that he'll go back to the Clippers. Maybe some teams will be scared off by his injury. We heard rumors that the Knicks were scared off by Durant's injury. Granted, I don't believe it, but I guess the possibility exists. Same logic here. But as for this game tonight and this series, the Clippers have no chance. The Jazz are going to destroy them. Alright, now I'll give you some NHL Valk talk. And truthfully, I'm not upset. As an Islanders fan, I'm really not upset. Look, would I have rather seen the Islanders win? Yes, of course. But what did I say yesterday? This game was much more of a must-win for the Lightning than it was for the Islanders. If you can get out of Tampa with a split, you're in good shape. Anything that happened here was gravy. The scariest moment was when Varlamov got ran over by Braden Point. Which should not have been a penalty, by the way. Like, the Lightning had every right to be upset over that. Because Adam Pelech did shove Point into Varley. The refs did make it up to the Lightning, though. They didn't call it too many men on the ice penalty, which would have negated the Andre Palat goal. Hopefully all the little kids watching can't read lips. Because you could see that Trotz was steaming mad, to put it lightly. But even then, going back to the hit that knocked Varley out for a little bit, my father turned to me and said, "This isn't good." I didn't have any worries. Ilya Sorokin won the Penguin series for the Islanders. I have full confidence in him. He looked good in his few minutes of ice time. He didn't give up a goal. He made 6 saves. I really wasn't overly worried. Think about where the Islanders are now, okay? It's down to a best 3 out of 5. The Islanders have home ice advantage. Games 3, 4, and 6 are in Uniondale. And you know the Coliseum's going to be rocking. Maybe they'll sing the national anthem like they did for Game 6, which was absolutely incredible. I've never seen them do that before. That was a great job by Islanders fans, really. I'm going to sing the anthem tomorrow. I usually don't sing the anthem, but I'm going to sing it tomorrow. The only times I sing the anthem is when a Canadian team is playing, because I like singing "O Canada," and then I'll sing the Star Spangled Banner. Because I feel like it's anti-American to sing another country's national anthem and then not sing the American national anthem. The Islanders are fine here. Yes, they got thoroughly outplayed by the Lightning. Okay, give the Lightning credit. They came in and won a game that they needed to win. It wasn't a very impressive game by the Islanders. They were physical, which you like to see. This is going to be a physical series all throughout. Okay, we all know that. Game 3, everyone's going to be out for blood. It's going to be a very exciting game tomorrow, let me tell you. I'm looking forward to it. Alright, now it's time to preview tonight's game between the Habs and the Golden Knights. I'll start with the Habs, as cliche as this is going to sound, and you may think this is a cop-out, but it's the truth. They just have to be better. Carey Price did not play well. He gave up 4 goals. That's the most goals he's given up in a game since Game 4 of the Leafs series. Price did not impress me. The Habs offense didn't impress me. A lot of their shots came from the outside. They made Marc-Andre Fleury's life very easy. Bad job by them, but in all fairness, they are the inferior team, so it is a tall order for them to beat a goalie like Fleury. The Habs are here way ahead of schedule. I said that on Friday, that the Golden Knights are the better team. You saw why in Game 1. The only goal they scored was a power play goal. Then, less than a minute later, they give up a goal to Matthias Janmark. The Golden Knights are by far and away the better team. I'd like for them, though, to be better on the power play. They were 0 for 4 on Monday. Price did a good job there. And it's certainly not the end of the world if you can beat Price even strength consistently, but you'd still like the Golden Knights to be better on the power play if you're a fan of theirs. I think they'll score on the power play tonight. Let's say that the Golden Knights score at least 1 power play goal, and they're going to win tonight. Give me Vegas. Alright, now I'll give you some MLB Valk talk. Haven't talked about this because, candidly, I really don't care about it. Then again, I should, because I am a baseball fan. That, of course, is Major League Baseball clamping down on pitchers applying foreign substances to the baseball. Basically, everything except rosin is still legal. You can't use sunscreen. You can't use spider tack. You can't use pine tar. I mean, I don't want to go through everything, but umpires are going to be more diligent in their enforcement of it. Pitchers could be suspended for 10 days, so 2 starts. Teams wouldn't be able to replace the pitcher on the active roster, so instead of having 26 guys, they'd have 25. Look, I don't mind it. What do we want? More balls in play. What's a way to get there? By limiting spin rate. I mean, I don't know enough about spin rate to say that this is the maximum that the human hand can do, and this is what it can do when you have something like spider tack or pine tar helping you out. I mean, look, this has been happening for years, for decades, since Major League Baseball has been a thing. Pitchers have applied stuff to the baseball. It's just when you start getting a little more advanced and you use something like spider tack, something that you wouldn't see at a major league ballpark, yeah, okay, that's an issue. I mean, no one wants to see pitchers use pine tar, but it can be done. It can be done very easily. You hide it in the glove. Same thing with sunscreen. Hide it in the glove. I mean, here's my question. Are we going to look at offenders of this the same way that we look at steroid offenders? I mean, it's kind of an interesting dichotomy, right? You have the hitters looking to improve themselves via steroids, so the pitchers are countering with something like spider tack, something that I didn't even know was a thing until it was brought up in conjunction with Garrett Cole. And let me just say this, I'm sure that Cole isn't the only pitcher using spider tack. There's no question that he's used it. Okay, that answer that he gave in the press conference was terrible. Bad job by him. I expect better than that from him. I'm disappointed in him. I mean, he's become the face of this because he's the most high-profile pitcher to be linked to this. I mean, I think what's funny is you have hitters saying, no, we want the pitchers to use it. They'll control the baseball more. So here's my question. If the pitchers want to do it and the hitters want them to do it, and this has been happening for decades, why clamp down on it? You have Tyler Glasnow getting hurt and pointing to this mid-season rule change as the reason. I don't know whether it is or it isn't, but I think it's safe to say that it was a contributing factor. To change something like that mid-season is tough. Look, I really don't care. This isn't a huge deal. Maybe it'll get more balls in play. Maybe it won't. I find it hard to believe that pitchers won't find a way to rough up the baseball a little bit more. You just have to be a little more creative. Maybe you rub something in the hair, something in the pocket. I don't know. I just don't understand why this is a huge issue now. This would have subsided pretty quickly if it had been ignored. This has been going on for decades. It doesn't really matter. That's the thing. Hard for me to get too into it. Alright, now I'll give you some more NBA Valk talk. I'll expand my basketball horizons past the playoffs to talk about a couple coaches that need to take resume writing classes. The first is Scott Brooks. I don't mind him being fired. I'm not a big Brooks fan. I don't think he's terrible, but I don't think he's great. I don't think he makes his teams that much better. He does get along with Russell Westbrook, which isn't easy, okay? I like that. He can get along with mercurial personalities, but that's not enough. You've got to win. And in Brooks' 5 years with the Wizards, they've only won one playoff series. They beat the Hawks in 6 games in 2017. Now, it's important to note that this is being reported not as a firing, but simply that the Wizards and Brooks couldn't agree on a new contract. Then again, if you like a coach that much, you'll make it work, right? It's not like it counts against the salary cap. If you really thought that Brooks was the right coach for this team, you'd work out a new contract with him. It'll be interesting to see who the Wizards get to replace him. You gotta think that Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook are gonna be upset. They wanted Brooks back, and Brooks did do a good job of rallying this team to a playoff berth. What does this mean for Beal? What does this mean for Westbrook? You've got to give him a seat at the table, but then again, they may say, my guy was Brooks, you let him walk. I mean, Bradley Beal has always said that he wants to stay in DC, but this may push him over the edge. Maybe. I don't know. And Westbrook, God only knows what goes on in his head. It's going to be interesting to see what the Wizards do going forward. I'd be surprised if Brooks got another head coaching job, though. He could be an assistant coach, but I think he's shown that he's just an average head coach at best. The second guy to talk about is the stunner. Stan Van Gundy is out as Pelicans head coach after just 1 year. Supposedly, he didn't get along with Brandon Ingram. I mean, the Pelicans certainly didn't take a big jump from last year to this year. They were only 1 game better. Their defense was only marginally better. But you just hired this guy. Stan Van Gundy is a proven coach in this league. This isn't like Nate Bjorkgren, where it's clear that he's lost the locker room, they're not playing for him, and you have no choice but to move on. No! Stan Van Gundy is a really good basketball mind. He took a Dwight Howard and Rafer Alston-led team, Hedo Turkoglu, Rashard Lewis, Jameer Nelson, whoever you want to say, to the NBA Finals. He makes his teams better. He's always made his teams better. I don't buy the notion that the game has passed him by. Brandon Ingram doesn't get along with him. You know what? Put the two of them in a room and have them work it out. Think about it. Zion Williamson is now on his 3rd coach in 3 years. The Pelicans have had an inability to keep their stars for extended periods of time. Case in point, Chris Paul and Anthony Davis. Zion may want out sooner rather than later. I understand that he doesn't have much of a choice yet, but he may be getting to that point. You can't change coaches every year. Stan Van didn't do a terrible job. Give him more than 1 year to right the ship. I like David Griffin. This is a bad move by him. You better replace him with a premier guy. Jason Kidd, Mike D'Antoni, Jacques Vaughn would make sense. You want to tell me Ime Udoka? I could live with that. But this is a bad job by the Pelicans. Alright, here's my interview with Matt Frazier and Robert Cheeke. You're listening to the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and right now I'm joined by Matt Frazier and Robert Cheeke, the authors of The Plant-Based Athlete, a game-changing approach to peak performance. Guys, welcome. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you for having us.
All right, sounds good. So I'm going to alternate my questions between both of you. I'll start with Matt. How should someone start their journey toward having a plant-based diet?
That is one of my favorite questions because I absolutely love the small steps approach to changing your habits. A lot of people get inspired and excited to hear about all these amazing athletes in our book who choose a plant-based diet and absolutely thrive on it at the highest level. And they want to go plant-based overnight, flip a switch, and assume that, forever after this they'll be different and it'll be easy. The fact is it's not easy to make any kind of change that dramatically. So I'm such a huge fan of tiny steps. It took me actually 4 years to go from omnivorous to vegan. It doesn't need to take anybody that long. But if you want to transition over the course of several weeks, a month, even a couple months, I think that's the best way to do it. So, I would find some plant-based breakfast recipes, maybe some smoothie, maybe some oatmeal, something that you can eat because we eat a lot of plant-based foods for breakfast anyway. And start with that and just eat a plant-based breakfast for a week or 2 weeks or whatever. And as you start to feel the benefits from that and you feel this feeling of lightness and energy throughout the morning, then push it to lunchtime. See if you can go plant-based, say, until dinner. So I'm a big fan of just gradually incorporating it. I think it gives your body time to adjust. It gives you time to adjust to the social implications and the ordering out at restaurants. So I really like to go a little bit at a time.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Robert, is it possible to get the necessary protein on a plant-based diet?
Jacob, absolutely, and I am one living proof example of that. I've put on 100 pounds, believe it or not, on a plant-based diet, and I post my before and after photos all the time. I've been doing this for a quarter century now, and I started out as a 15-year-old, 120-pound endurance athlete. And, I was a 5-sport athlete in high school, but mostly endurance-focused, and I wanted to get bigger and stronger, I guess like a lot of teenagers. I wanted to be like a pro wrestler, and I eventually discovered the sport of weightlifting and became a champion bodybuilder, and over the course of years actually gained 100 pounds from 120 to 220 pounds, which I am now. And clearly I got all the protein that I needed, and probably a lot more than I needed. And so the key is to basically consume the adequate calories that you need, and by default you'll get your protein needs met. And so what I mean by that is if your real protein and your real calorie requirements are 2,500 a day or whatever the case is, eat those calories from a variety of food sources, and just by nature you will get the requisite protein that you need in order to maintain or build muscle mass. And so you can look to certain foods too, like obviously legumes, beans, and lentils and foods like that are going to be higher in protein than, let's say, fruit. Or you can go to leafy green vegetables or to nuts and nut butters, of course. Peanut butter, almond butter, those types of things are known for their protein content and for their calorie content in order to build mass. And if you combine that focus on some of those more protein-rich foods like lentil soup, like adding walnuts to oatmeal, like adding, if you want, a plant-based protein powder to a smoothie, or having a plant-based burger or sandwich, and you combine that with resistance weight training, that is how you build muscle. And that's what I've been doing throughout my entire career and what many people in the plant-based athlete have been doing as well. And it's just been so fun to be able to tell those stories of some of the greatest athletes in the world, Olympians, world champions, Guinness World Record holders who have done this, including sports like powerlifting and bodybuilding, not just endurance sports. So we tell those stories in the book, and I think that's really going to resonate with readers when they can see that, there are some amazing athletes who are doing this, and we can learn from them.
Right, absolutely. So, Matt, how are plant-based fats better than animal-based fats?
For me, it's largely that first of all, animal-based fats are largely much more high saturated fat content. Saturated fat, of course, is what typically clogs the arteries, disrupts the endothelial cells. So if you can get the unsaturated fats, which are much more common in the plant foods, that's generally going to be a better choice. for me, though, really the biggest thing is that the fats in animal foods, they come with animal protein. And to me, animal protein, much as like it's so strange that we think of that as like this really this necessary food for all of our diets. We must, got milk and where's the beef? It's like that's I think really the worst part of most omnivorous diets is just the sheer amount of animal protein that we eat. Animal protein stimulates the production of IGF-1, which is insulin-like growth factor. It's a hormone that helps the creatures grow, which is great if you're a young cow trying to grow 1,000 pounds in 2 years. It's not so great when you're an adult and you're supposed to be finished your growth period. So if you're eating this food that really promotes rapid growth of not just muscle, which that's why people use it, but also things like tumors, unfortunately, and promotes cancer. There are really a lot of dangers of excessive levels of animal protein. So I think the worst part about animal fat is that it so often comes with animal protein.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. Robert, should people on plant-based diets take nutritional supplements?
Jacob, I love this question because you know what? It's the supplement industry is really driven by people who are not plant-based, people who are not eating a lot of fruits and vegetables to get their vitamins and minerals, and so they're having to take a multivitamin, or they're taking all these extra supplements to make up for the foods that they're actually not eating. And so sometimes people associate, well, if you're plant-based or you're vegan, you must have to take lots of supplements, right? And really the answer is no. There are a few key important ones like vitamin B12 that doesn't come from animals or from plants. It's a bacteria, and so it's recommended that everybody take it. And vitamin D, which really isn't really a vitamin at all, comes from the sun. And so, that's something you can take in supplement form too, especially if you don't live somewhere like sunny California or sunny Florida. So that can be recommended, and a few others. But by and large, what we found after doing this for decades and interviewing experts and dietitians and doctors and people who really specialize in this area is that it's really people who are not following a plant-based diet who are more likely to need to supplement. And that's one of the things that we try to communicate in the book. And though I mentioned if you wanted to boost protein and take a little bit with a plant-based protein powder, you can certainly do it with real food as well. Just adding more legumes, beans, nut butters, something like that. You could do tofu tempeh if that's something that you're interested in. But supplementation, we dedicated an entire chapter to that. When you talk about athletic performance, there might be some you want to consider because they can just help with recovery or help boost energy, some things like that. We talk about the benefits perhaps of caffeine or creatine and tart cherry juice and turmeric and ginger and things that are really fairly natural, many times just foods, but they get used as supplements. But in general, the beauty of a plant-based diet is that you get so much nutrition from a variety of food that you really don't have to rely on taking pills.
Okay. All right. So, Matt, how should someone put together a plant-based meal plan?
So that's a great question. It really depends so much on your individual preferences. If you look in the book, we've got a day in the life of 25 different top athletes who are featured in the book. And if you look at all the different ways they eat, it's really very different. There are a lot of ways to make a plant-based diet work, and I think that speaks to the quality of the individual foods that make up a plant-based diet. So you actually don't have to be that careful in crafting the perfect meal plan. Some of these top Olympians even, like medalist Dotsie Bausch, she just eats to her hunger. She doesn't really try to hit certain numbers or anything like that. So I kind of take a hybrid approach. I like to stick to foods that I know will provide me meals that I know will provide me some of the highest value foods that I try to get in a day. So really quickly, my typical meal plan, and this is just kind of a framework that I recommend to people who want to do this, of course, is for breakfast, just go with a smoothie or an oatmeal. Either one of those things, you can incorporate lots of nuts and seeds, lots of fruits, and in the case of the oatmeal, you get some whole grains as well. For salad, for lunch, I usually do a giant salad with a bunch of beans on top, either olive oil and vinegar as the dressing, or even a nut-based dressing. If you want a little side of whole grains, that's totally fine. So now we got the smoothie for breakfast, the salad for lunch, and then dinner. My favorite framework is a grain, a green, and a bean. And that sounds like it might just be kind of some mushy, big vegan bowl that no one's going to like. But it turns out that a grain, a green, and a bean takes a lot of forms. A lot of really good, hearty stews are made of greens and beans. Tacos can be a grain. It's the shell. You put some beans inside, and you put some greens on top. Stir fry dishes, lots and lots of Indian food, Thai food. There's so many different ways to do the green bean. And for me, that prevents me from having to always have a certain recipe in mind. You can stare at your pantry or your fridge and see what's there. And if you're thinking green bean, you're usually going to have some meal ideas that come from that, and you're going to be able to have the confidence that meal is providing you lots and lots of macronutrients, protein, carbs, and fat, as well as lots and lots of micronutrients, because that's what plants do best.
Green beans. Sounds good. So, Robert, obviously you're a world-class athlete. What do you want me, a non-athlete, to take away from this book?
You know what? That's the beauty of this book. We actually designed it to be for the everyday person. We actually wrote it for the weekend warrior, the recreational athlete, the person who wants to get a little bit more mileage from their plant-based diet with their active lifestyle. Even though I know that the subtitle is a game-changing approach to peak performance, what we're really trying to do is help people get the most out of their athletic endeavors. And actually, those are the people who are not elite or world-class who have the most to gain. Because if you can just make some minor switches in your dietary plan, if you can adjust your diet and your nutrition program just a little bit, you can see those benefits on a real-world basis. Like, you may experience it within weeks, within months, and it could really change your world. And so that's who we really wrote it for. So anyone can get the benefits of a plant-based diet with their active lifestyle while using some of these incredible world-class athlete stories to serve as inspiration and aspiration of something that we can strive to make improvements in our own health and fitness. All right.
So, Matt, the last chapter of the book contains a bunch of recipes, and they all look really interesting. I'm a big Food Network guy. I like cooking. It's a guilty pleasure. What's the one recipe? What's the one recipe in the book that you want everyone to try?
Man, there are so many in there, and you know what's cool about the recipes is they're all contributed by the athletes. They're typically not by us, which I think is really neat, because to be able to know what truly the best athletes in the world are doing, that's like gold to me. But I think my favorite recipe is Robert's curried chickpeas. I'm just a really, really big fan of Indian food and all kinds of ethnic food. So chickpeas to me are like one of the desert island foods as far as health goes. So if you put curry and coconut milk around them, then you've got a winning meal there.
That sounds good. I'll have to try it. Robert, I'll get you out on this. The big question, the question that hovers over everyone when it comes to this topic: is it possible to lead a healthy lifestyle on a diet that includes animal-based foods? In other words, is there a one-size-fits-all approach?
Wow, that is a great question. The science suggests that yes, you can live a healthy lifestyle with the inclusion of some animal protein, but the benefits of more and more and more plants outweigh that. So basically, the more plant-based you go, the reduced risk for all-cause mortality, and that's been studied for decades and decades. That this is, like the Blue Zone suggests, this is the plant-based diet is the diet that leads to the longest and healthiest lives. And yeah, there could be a little bit of animal protein here and there, but by and large, the more plants on your plate, the better. And we've seen across the board that this has really benefited athletes and active individuals. And we're just hoping that more and more people will discover that, because this could be great for you, for the environment, for the animals. It's a win-win-win for everyone. And we're so excited to see more people putting more plants on their plate.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jacob. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right. That was Matt Frazier and Robert Cheeke. They're the authors of The Plant-Based Athlete, a game-changing approach to peak performance. Thanks for listening. Here comes the outro. Thanks for the plug, Jacob from the past. It does mean a lot. Until tomorrow, I am Jacob Valk saying that standing in center field at Veterans Stadium was like standing in a toxic waste dump.